Media recognition from Bloomberg, Reuters, recycling trade publications. Patented process for 100% recovery of critical metals, including cobalt, lithium, nickel, manganese, aluminum. American Manganese is focused on recycling lithium-ion batteries for electric vehicles. American Manganese trades on the TSX Venture, AMY, the US, AMYZF, and Frankfurt 2AM. For more information, visit AmericanManganeseInc.com or phone me, Larry Ray, at 778-574-4444.
You're listening to HowStreet.com radio, available online at TalkDigitalNetwork.com. Welcome to HowStreet.com radio, the online source for market opinions. Here is Jim Goddard.
My guest is market historian Bob Hoye. He's the chief investment strategist for chartsandmarkets.com. Welcome back to the show, Bob.
Yeah, hi, Jim. Always look forward to our Friday get-togethers.
Bob, we have a plethora of questions from around this little blue orb that hurtles through space at 1 million miles a day. So we'll get straight to those questions. The first one comes from our friend Michael, and it's about what's been making the headlines the last couple of days. Even the late-night talk shows are making jokes about it. So it must be a hot topic, and that's the Reddit message board users, the so-called Robinhooders, using their financial might to take on the giant hedge funds. Now, is this just a popular uprising where they're trying to teach the hedge fund managers a lesson, or is there something else behind this?
Actually, it's everything. I'm fascinated by it. It became a risk situation. The hedge funds that maybe stayed too long short could not imagine a straight-up market. And any veterans in the markets can't imagine somebody buying a straight-up market. But what it turned out to be is that you've got millions of these day traders who are, well, they're new to the game. Even if they've been trading for a year and made a lot of money, they're still new. So if you say risk a couple of thousand, that's no big risk if you say in a larger position. But if you got millions of people doing that, you then have the unusual example of always having a bid on a straight-up market. And then you have the shorts throwing in the towel and covering. And it is remarkable. Now, also, the headlines are about that this is the small guy taking on the establishment, which is true. And I'm just writing a piece now on reviewing some previous extraordinary short stories. But even in my own experience, I know that if the establishment is on the wrong side of the short squeeze, the rules will be eased so that the establishment wins. Now, that seemed to appear yesterday with the GME, and because they suddenly came in with a rule that you could sell, but you couldn't buy, and then that took the stock from 480 down to, 120 or something like that. So, but I'm pleased to see that the stock is holding steady at the higher side of the trading range over the last while. I think I think it's very good from time to time that the establishment does get an instruction. It's getting it down.
Michael's second question: when President Biden abruptly canceled the Keystone pipeline, it seemed like he was serving Canada with divorce papers. Bob, how will AOC, that's Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez's new Green Deal, affect the resource sector should contrarians invest in oil, gas, and uranium?
I'm not sure about investing. The market's too precarious. But I've already written that with the new Green Deal and canceling pipelines in the States and canceling fracking and all that sort of stuff, that this, in a relative sense, will raise the price of gasoline and heating oil up where it shouldn't be. And I'm not saying how high, just relative increase, so that poorer folks are going to find it very expensive to drive or even heat their homes. Now, we already know about heating starvation in England because their radical Greens have been in power for too long. So it's a good question. Now, the absurdity is that Prime Minister Trudeau protesting the shutdown of Keystone, which is under construction. So, I mean, you got pipe stacked all over the place. But that's absurd because his government is doing everything it can to shut down petroleum and natural gas and coal in production in Canada, as well as to shut down pipelines in Canada. So it's an absurdity of our times, and but I think people are beginning to realize that these so-called experts really are rather crazy, and they're wasting too much of your time and money. So I think that a popular uprising is going to become even more exciting.
Bob, we have a question from Andrew in Germany. The question, short, really is how can all the new developments in the U.S. affect Bob's post-bubble contraction scenario? Should we be anticipating to enter the pre-bubble expansion?
That's good. I got to stay with the way financial history has worked. The pattern has been a decade of speculation in hard assets, commodities, that sort of thing. Inflation goes up. And then you get a decade, so to speak, of where the inflation is in financial assets. And certainly stock and bond prices have been highly elevated and are still outperforming the basic commodities. And the problem with the inflationists is that they learned all their stuff in the 1970s, that the Fed is evil. I agree. It's going to inflate its currency or its credit too much. I agree. But what happens is the public chooses what to speculate in. And when the speculation in financial assets has been greater than the speculation in hard assets, such as commodities, it's always followed by a sharp hit to the financial markets, and then a bear market, and then a recession. Oftentimes, over time, you can then call it a post-bubble contraction. So we look, and certainly, the action is definitely in stock prices, where you've got GME going from, $17 to $480 in a short period of time. So, no, I think when this one, the market is clearly overdone. The extraordinary spike-ups in individual stocks is also symptomatic of a conclusion. And I think we're going to head into a post-bubble contraction. Just another one.
Yeah, Andrew also wonders if this GameStop Reddit thing is taking advantage of President Biden's fumbling of executive files already.
Oh, no, I think it erupted on its own. The overriding thing, Jim, has been that with the new administration and Congress, they're going to be incredibly reckless at the Treasury and at the Federal Reserve and everything. But that's all in the market. Everybody knows that now. So, and we're seeing signs of excessive speculation in the senior stock indexes at the right time. Recall, we were looking for back in October. We thought that it was oversold then, and we would rally out to around January. And if it got speculative, it could conclude the whole action. And this is incredible speculation. So, hey, here we are. I think the inflationists have not done enough work. If they do the full research back to 1700, they would then see the way these big patterns go. So, and it is just a wrap on it. An era of inflation in commodities, crash. An era of inflation in financial assets, crash, contraction. That's as simple as I can put it.
We'll have the answers to more listener questions when Bob Hoye returns.
Avon Resources Limited is a gold exploration company with significant projects in British Columbia and the Yukon. Trading on the TSX Venture Exchange, symbol ABN, and the OTCQB, symbol ABNAF. Surrounded by world-class gold deposits and mines, Avon's 23,000 hectares Forest Kerr Gold Project is located in the heart of the Golden Triangle in northwestern BC. For more information, visit us at avonresources.com.
Engineer Gold Mines is focused on the exploration and development of the historic high-grade Engineer Gold Mine situated 32 kilometers southwest of Atlin, British Columbia. Engineer Gold Mines is fully permitted for surface and underground exploration with the drill program now underway. Engineer Gold Mines Limited trades on the TSX Venture Exchange, symbol EAU. For more information, please visit us at engineergoldmines.com.
Welcome back. We're speaking with Bob Hoye. Henry Solomon in El Paso. We don't need to say Texas because I don't know of any other El Pasos. He says, as a perpetual student of the Hoye Clark School of Economics, from which I will never graduate, I'd like to point out the following items. Number one, President Biden and his so-called progressives seem to be preoccupied with climate change. Item two, the same gang of Biden and the progressives appear to be in the process of destroying the oil and gas industry, and recent movements in investment markets, such as the S&P 500, appear to be a vote of no confidence in the leadership provided by Biden. And item number four, the only climate change I'm able to discern is an anti-business climate in the White House. What's your comments on that, Bob?
Yeah. Hey, Henry, this is good. The climate thing has been a tool of intrusion by ambitious governments. There is no way that increases or changes in atmospheric carbon dioxide has anything to do with actual changes in climate. Increasing CO2 does initially provide a little warming, but there are much bigger things going on. So that then, when the Wuhan flu came along, it provided another magnificent tool for the control freaks and was actually used to change the election. So what you have now here is the Biden administration has come in with executive orders adding up in a short time, adding up to all of what the previous two presidents had done. So the left is in control, and it is absolutely, ambition is without end. But there are things within the constitution of each state that may be used to kind of curb the damage that they will do. Yeah, communist-style re-education camps. Yeah, I know that they would certainly love to re-educate me, but they ain't going to do it. And everybody should become as resolute in defending freedom as the Democrats are in destroying freedom. And one thing about it is, on the conservative side, you can still keep morals and ethics at the forefront while defending freedom. So I'm all for it, but I can't believe that the forces of ambition have been able to corrupt governments as far as they have. So the next few years are going to be very interesting.
Henry also asks, Bob, what do you think about gold miners like GDX and GDXJ? Yeah,
well, we're long-term bulls on the gold side, and 2018 was the transition, whereby, and we're still the only one out there that keeps track of gold's real price, which is the purchasing power, and deflated by the CPI. And the gold's real price reached a speculative high in 2011 and came all the way down to 2018. And during that period, you had the big financial bubble on, and our view back then was that the gold stocks would underperform the S&P because of the bubble. But then we saw the change in gold's real price, and it's gone up terrifically, which when it goes up, it enhances profit margins for operators. And so if you take the low for the GDXJ in 2018 and to the high in August, and oh, by the way, in July, we noted the technical excesses in the gold sector and advised people to take some money off the table. But to that high, the gain in the GDXJ was almost twice the gain in the S&P, which is an outperformance. And then once this correction for the gold sector completes, and I'm sure we'll be able to call that one as well, the next leg up for the sector will again outperform the S&P. And then having spent so much time in the institutional land, in the institutional equity side and stuff, you begin to understand how that fund managers work. And they will eventually have funds that may not want to own gold stocks. They will eventually have to own them because they will be the outperforming sector. So this is why, for the long term, we're very bullish on the gold sector.
And Henry also sends out a salute to our veterans. He watched the movie A Bridge Too Far, based on the book by Cornelius Ryan, about the largest paratroop operation in the Second World War, where they thought if they could capture a bridge going into Germany from the Netherlands, they could end the war by Christmas. That's always the ambition. And of course, it was a narrow road, and Montgomery ignored warnings from the French underground that fresh German troops had recently moved into that area. And yes, the paratroopers were slaughtered needlessly because they ignored the warning signs.
Yeah.
So that's a message for everyone, I think.
For a long time, or since I've been reading about World War II, General Montgomery, he was a pompous fool. I never had any regard for him, and it was a wrong move. Poor research, poor planning, and a poor final decision, and an interesting question.
Bob, we have a question from Justin Lee. Basically, it's, Bob, is there a currency crisis about to happen? Have you seen past events where a reserve currency went into crisis? And is the U.S. dollar a candidate for a currency crisis?
Justin, I love your question. Yeah. We're going into a U.S. dollar currency crisis. And if you look back in history, which the gold bugs and inflationists never seem to look at, every financial crisis where stocks and bonds go down, the U.S. dollar goes up. So all of the lads out there have got themselves fired up that the crisis is going to be that the U.S. dollar is going to go to zero. In which case, if you take a look at super hyperinflation like in Germany, in the Weimar Republic in early 1920s, the stock market, adjusted for inflation, did very well, as did gold. So that was the worst crisis in a reasonably operating economy where the currency did go to zero and people made money in the stock market. So here you go now. You've got these inflationists who really don't seem to do any research at all, and they're calling for a currency crisis, the dollar going down, and that somehow financial assets would go down with a weakening dollar. Just take a look at history. The crisis will be in the U.S. dollar, but likely going up. And one of the things that we've noted is that in a post-bubble contraction, the senior currency, dollar now, it used to be sterling, heads up. And the phrase we've used is that it becomes chronically firm against most currencies and most commodities for most of the time. And it's right there in the record. You can look at 300 years of it. So, yeah, it's going to be a probably at some time we'll discover that we are in a credit crisis, and the crisis would likely be the U.S. dollar firming. Now, what could possibly firm the U.S. dollar? Well, what has happened in a great financial bubble, most of the debt issued is underwritten in the financial center, which is New York. And once the bubble party is over in bonds, then the issue becomes debt service. and you have to get all those borrowers have to get dollars from somewhere to service their debt obligations in New York. So the bond bubble is essentially a huge short position in dollars. So I'm fairly confident that on the next financial crisis, the crisis will be the U.S. dollar going up. Thanks for the question.
We have a question from James McKeon, which basically asks, with so many forms of speculation out there and everything being part of a big bubble, including gold, silver, even Bitcoin being advertised as the new gold and the ultimate store of value, how could you blow a little more Bob Hoye logic into all these different balloons floating out there that most likely are going to burst?
Yeah, I think we pretty well covered that with the previous questions. A term I used years ago is that a bubble will reach its gossamer limit and collapse. You can't tell which week or which day ahead of time, but one of the things is to look at patterns, and we go back to October when the stock market was oversold. The next natural high could have been around January, and we noted that if it became highly speculative, it could be the concluding action, and this is highly speculative. So we're getting the high when expected. There are terrific signs of speculation, and so I think the correction is very close to starting. The first step would to be watch for the momentum, the decline in momentum, and then the next step would be taking out and the senior indexes like the S&P, the 1st of January low, and then you want to look at other items like base metals and basically the industrial commodities weakening as well. So I think we're looking at some weakness ahead of us here.
Bob loves to answer your questions. You can send them to info@housestreet.com. Please try to keep your questions as concise and brief as possible for time reasons.
Yeah, and also I'm going to add that some of these questions appear to be editorials, which is great, but it's very difficult to respond to an editorial. It takes another editorial. So let's just keep it down to questions and work it that way.
We'll have more with Bob Hoye right after this.
Value from success. Growth in discovery. Golden Arrow Resources is a well-funded gold-copper exploration company with proven management and prospective properties in Chile, Argentina, and Paraguay. Golden Arrow trades on the Toronto Venture Exchange, symbol GRG, on Frankfurt, symbol G6A, and the OTCQB, symbol GARWF. For more information, visit us at goldenarrowresources.com or call Sean at 778-686-0135.
Don't miss out. Stay informed. Receive the HoweStreet.com weekly recap with thought-provoking podcasts, radio, and articles delivered to your inbox. Sign up for the HoweStreet.com weekly recap on our homepage at HoweStreet.com.
Welcome back. We're speaking with Bob Hoye. Bob, a headline that caught your attention. All investors can do is to keep buying.
Yeah. That's the problem with a long rising market, is that institutions, high net worth accounts, investors of any size, you just sort of have to stay long. And then the excesses come in and then they change. So, but what we grab these headlines to, it's a form of research, and you note the headlines, and these are the headlines that you get at tops.
Bob, with that attitude, is that why this Reddit message board thing has gone nuts, where people feel they have to put money somewhere, so even if you don't know anything about it or have no background, you might as well take a flyer on it?
Oh, there's part of that, but you know, the GME Reddit thing, I admire it. It's been wonderfully played by the long side that engineered the short squeeze, and I admire it. But it's so exceptional, it can only happen after you've had a long bull market and there's tremendous confidence, and also there are smaller investors in the market, and between looking at new investors, new brokers, new brokerages, and new issues of stock called IPOs, intuitively, there hasn't been anything like this since 1968 and 69. But you can't put numbers on it because they just don't exist. But, man, I was on the institutional equity desk here in Vancouver in that period, 68 and 69, when in a new issue market. It was absolutely fabulous. Quite something. And here we are, something that is huge and bigger and phenomenal and everything. So, but we want to look at it and recognize that it is part of ending action. So that's the key.
Another headline that caught your eye: lumber buyers either pay up or run out as a home building surge builds in the United States. Again,
another sign of instability, where you've had downtown core of big cities become so corrupt, and also governments have become, city governments have become corrupt as well, and are allowing the deterioration of central cores. So people are voting with their feet and saying, hey, I'm out of here. So then you got a new bid for housing outside in other regions, and then that also requires building new houses and also renovating existing houses. So the lumber has had it's the biggest swings in history. It's absolutely amazing. And this week, setting new highs. And it's very painful for those who are partway through a renovation or building a house. It's amazing. And who knows, again, it'll probably change as the financial markets change and we go into this contraction.
Bob, thank you so much for being on the show and answering all those questions.
Yeah, all those questions indeed. Jim, always enjoy it, and we look forward to next week.
If you have any questions for Bob, you can send them to info@howestreet.com. Please try to keep them as brief and concise as possible for time reasons, because we get so many questions. You can find us on Twitter @HowStreet. Our YouTube channel is Talk Digital Network. We're also on Facebook. I'm Jim Goddard. Thank you for listening.
Comments made on HowStreet.com radio are an expression of opinion only and should not be construed in any matter whatsoever as recommendations to buy or sell any financial instrument at any time. Available online at TalkDigitalNetwork.com. HowStreet.com radio is a production of HowStreet Media Incorporated.